Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this webcast. My name is Mattia Epifani. I am a SANS instructor, and I'm taking tonight a webcast on Checkm8, Checkra1n, and the new golden age for iOS forensics. So the goal of this presentation is to provide you an overview of the actual state of iOS forensics in terms of the most commonly used techniques and methods to get access to data stored on an iOS device. I'm a SANS instructor. I teach the FOR500 and the FOR585 course, so the smartphone forensic analysis course. And as I told you, I live and work in Italy. I'm not in the picture. I'm not the beautiful lady. I'm not one of the two beautiful dogs. I'm the other one. So I live in Italy. I have a master's degree in IT. I'm the CEO of RealityNet, a consulting company providing digital forensic services to public and private sector. And I'm a SANS instructor. And I'm also a researcher at the National Council of Research here in Italy. Why I want to discuss with you about iOS? Because iOS is, of course, the second most used mobile operating system worldwide, and 25%, it has 25% of the market. And it is used a lot, and it also has different versions that we can meet during our investigations. To be honest, as you can see from this slide, almost 80–85% of the devices are nowadays updated to iOS 13, and there is a huge number of devices updated to the latest version. That's something really common with iOS devices. Still, you can see that you have like a 7% of other. It means other operating system, other version of the operating system. And if you take a look, if we take a look at the same thing with tablet, in the tablet world, it means only the iPads in the Apple world. You see that we still have a lot of devices with iOS 9.3 and iOS 10.3, because that was the latest version of iOS supported by some specific models. So when we have to deal with an iOS device, I think that these are the two main rules you have to follow. I tried to depict some of the common scenarios that we face. And the first question is, when you're doing a search and seizure, or when you are going to analyze and acquire an iOS device, is this device turned on or turned off when you receive it? And when you receive or when you seize a device that is turned on, either locked or unlocked, it's the right time to do not turn it off immediately and start thinking of what you can do. If you find a turned off device, you can leave it off for now, and then we will discuss during the presentation what you can do. So these are the four relevant and most commonly found scenarios that I tried to organize for this presentation and to discuss in this presentation. The first one is the scenario in which the device is turned on, and at the time in which it is seized, it's unlocked. Unlocked means that you can have access to the settings, you can move through the various applications of the iOS device. You don't know if it is unlocked, because at that time it is unlocked, but there is a passcode, and so you have to deal with this scenario really, really carefully. I would say that it is quite rare, also in the real world to find a turned on and unlocked device, but that is the scenario in which you have to take, especially if you are working in law enforcement and you have to deal with real cases, I mean, on the field. This is the proper time in which you have to carefully think of what will be your next step. And the first step, in my opinion, because it's turned on and it is unlocked, so you have access to the phone, and the first thing to do is to try to avoid external network connections, because maybe the user or someone can send some wide commands, that the worst scenario, but also can remove some selective information, like removing a chat or removing some information remotely. So as always, when you have a mobile device, disabling network connection is a need. I strongly suggest you not to remove the SIM card. There is a nice blog post on the Elcomsoft blog website where they explain the 5 worst mistakes you can do, and one of these mistakes is removing the SIM card. Removing the SIM card could, not always, but could activate protection mechanisms, like, for example, disabling the Face ID or disabling something that could help us getting into the phone. Then, because it's turned on and it's unlocked, I strongly suggest to disable the auto lock. Disable auto lock means that the phone doesn't go automatically in an auto lock state. You don't need to know the passcode to disable auto lock. It can be done if the phone is unlocked. It can be done. You go into settings, display and brightness, auto lock, and you set it to never. Then the next step is verify if a passcode is set or not. Remember, we are in the scenario in which the phone is unlocked, so you have access to the settings. You can browse, you can move around through your iOS device. And again, you can go into settings, and in this case, I would suggest you to go to the Face ID and passcode option. The Face ID and passcode option would then reveal either one of those two pictures. It means you need to know the passcode to get into the settings to change the passcode. And at this time, we don't know the passcode, okay? So which kind of information we get from this action? That there is a passcode set. So it means that if we turn off the device, or we go into a locked state, we need to know a passcode to get into the phone. If you see this one, it means that it's a complex passcode. It's not just a digit. Passcode, it can be also letters and symbols. You will get a complex keyboard, and here you will get only digits keyboard. The other thing that can happen when you click on Face ID and passcode is that you get access to the configuration of Face ID and passcode, and you see this message, this option, turn passcode on. If you see turn passcode on, it means that the phone is unlocked because there's no passcode. So if that is the situation, I would say that you can turn off the phone, because there's no risk of a passcode protection, because that is the information that we got from the settings. If you are in one of those two situations, it means that you are still in an unlocked state, but if the phone gets locked, you will lose the option to move around through the phones. So my suggestion at this point is to connect the phone to a PC and try to identify the device UDID. The device UDID is a unique identifier, unique device identifier that univocally identifies every and each Apple iOS device. It can be an iPhone, an iPad, an Apple TV, or whatever it is. So once you have the device UDID, to do that, you can use an open source tool. IMEI device can be downloaded for free from GitHub. You have version for Linux, Mac, and Windows. Once you have the device UDID, what should you do next? You need to search for a lockdown certificate. Why you should do that? Because a lockdown certificate should allow you to create a connection between the phone that at this point is unlocked and a computer. Where can you find a lockdown certificate? You could possibly find it on a computer of the suspect. It can be a PC or a Mac. There you see the two folders containing the lockdown certificates. If you can extract this certificate from the computer and you are under certain conditions, so the lockdown certificate must not be expired, you have to use it within some hours since the last usage of the passcode. So it must be really quickly, and it doesn't work now. It doesn't work over the last years. It didn't work anymore on freshly restarted devices. So you cannot use it if you have a phone that is locked and it was turned off. So that's why you have a turned on phone and it is unlocked. That's the moment in which you have to carefully think what will be your next step. So if you can find this lockdown certificate, and this is the lockdown certificate from the same phone of the previous slides, if you can find this plist file, you can use various tools or also simply iTunes to get an iTunes backup, to get access better, to get a pairing between a computer and your phone. If the lockdown certificate is valid and if the phone is still is not a freshly restarted phone, so if you are under the conditions that you can use the lockdown certificate, then you can have access to different ports and protocols, let me say that. So I will tell you soon about this different acquisition mechanism that you can use if you have access through a lockdown certificate. In any case, with the lockdown certificate, you can use different mobile forensic tools. The question could be, why don't you create a pairing on your own? You have an unlocked device, because it's unlocked at this time, it's unlocked. Why don't I create a pairing between my phone and my computer? I can do it. As soon as I connect my phone, I will get a message to trust my computer. And when I click on trust, the problem is that it will happen what you see in the slide. I will receive a request to enter my passcode to trust this computer. It means that to create a pairing, a new pairing, I need to know the passcode. So basically, without knowing the passcode, I cannot generate a new valid lockdown certificate. That's why searching for a previously created, it's still a good option after a lot of years. We are still, in some sense, relying on the lockdown certificate. We have news, of course, but I will go into that soon. If you cannot find a lockdown certificate and there is a passcode set, I'm not joking, my suggestion is to take as much picture as possible, or to find any kind of method to extract information from the phone or from the installed applications. One is just simply taking picture. You can also take screenshots, but be careful, because taking screenshots in the hardware way could easily lock the phone. A method that can be used is to airdrop. So I know it's not a great forensic method, but if you have an unlocked phone and you have disabled all the network connections, you can still set up a Wi-Fi network without internet connection and with another iPhone or a Mac on the other side connected to the same Wi-Fi network, you can activate Wi-Fi on the phone, connect the phone to the Wi-Fi without internet connection, and send pictures or files from the phone to the computer or to another iPhone that you can then acquire. I know it's not forensics, it's manual, but if you have a phone and you really think that the user will never provide you the code, especially if it is a modern phone like XR, XS, and 11 Pro, that's something that I suggest you to take into consideration, especially if you're in law enforcement. Of course, if you want to keep it on, one mandatory thing is to charge the phone, to keep the phone charged. We will soon also discuss about the USB restricted mode. That is another kind of issue that we can have. So this is a sort of wrap up of this first case, turn it on and unlocked. Second case, you can then download the slides. They will be made public, so no worries about that. Second scenario, turn it on and locked. To be honest, this is during search and seizure, one of the most common scenarios. You have a device, you don't know, maybe you don't know about the user, or you don't know the passcode, and you find the phone in this situation. It's on, but it's locked. So that is another critical situation, because you have some possible things to do, but you have to be very careful on how you do that. The first thing is to disable network connections. Disable network connection can be done also on a locked device if the control panel is activated. So basically, if you can scroll down and have access to the configuration, and you can activate the airplane mode, and be careful when you activate airplane mode, be careful to deactivate all the others connections, like in the case the phone is unlocked. So you have to disable Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cellular networks, everything. Just be sure that everything is disabled. What's the issue that could happen in doing that? One of the best things you could try doing with a locked but turned on phone is to use some biometric mechanism to bypass or to get into the phone. So to get into the previous state, turn it on and unlocked. The problem here is that first, you have a number of attempts. So if the face is not recognized for, it was 5 times. I don't know if this is, to be honest, if it has changed over the last versions of iOS, but if the face is not recognized for a certain number of times, then the phone will disable the login, the unlock with Face ID. So basically, you will not be able anymore to use Face ID. You need to know the passcode. So that's why you have to be very careful that you have a few number of attempts, and if you have the suspect, it's that, and if you are allowed to do that from a legal perspective, that's of course always must be taken into consideration first, the legal aspects. If you can do it, if you can have the suspect or the owner of the phone with you, supporting you, or at least in front of you, you can try to check if there is Face ID. And by scrolling, you will get this message, Face ID, but you have a fixed number of attempts. So be careful to do it only when you are pretty sure to have the phone in front of the owner. And then also you can see the number of digits. That's another kind of information that can be relevant. At this point, you should also check if USB restricted mode is in place. What is USB restricted mode is basically a feature that was introduced by Apple to protect the data transfer via the USB connection, so that if the phone, as you can see here, unlock iPhone to allow USB accessories to connect when it has been more than an hour since your iPhone was locked. So basically, if your phone is locked for more than 1 hour, you can only charge it. To allow data communication from iOS, you need to unlock the phone, and you need to unlock it with the passcode. And so that's an issue that creates an issue if you are in a state where USB restricted mode is already activated. So if the phone is locked on, but it was there for like hours, okay, or days maybe. In this case, you do not have a lot. There's not a lot that you can do, but we will see later what you can do with a turned off device. If USB restricted mode is not activated yet, you can again run device ID from Library device, get the UDID, search for a lockdown certificate, and try to pair your acquisition computer with the iPhone. That's another case in which you can try using the lockdown certificate. Also, in the same set of tools, iDevice, Library mobile device, you also have another tool called iDevice Info. You can use it, you can use iDevice Info-S, and you can get some information about the phone, also when the phone is locked. So here you can get the UDID, you can get the Wi-Fi MAC address, you can get the version of iOS that is installed, and the product type. So here you have the product type. The product type is the exact model of the iPhone. The build version, so the version of the build installed on the phone, the Wi-Fi MAC address, and some basic information about the hardware of the phone. This can be relevant to be extracted. You can also extract in XML plist format and open them with plist editor or other plist tool. So this is what you can do with a disabled and turned on, with a turned on and locked device. Check if you can unlock with Face ID or Touch ID, or if USB restricted mode is in place or not. If you cannot get access to it via Face Unlock or via USB, neither to get the data, the information about the phone, there's not a lot that you can do. So maybe you can keep it on if it is not connected to a network to try finding a lockdown certificate, but you have a fixed amount of time. So at a certain point, you can turn the phone off. And that leads us to the situation in which the worst scenario, that is the turned off device with a passcode. And then we will get into the best scenario, that is when you have a turned off device, but a passcode is not set, or you know the passcode. That's, of course, the best scenario. To turn it off with a passcode, and we don't know the passcode. That's the point. So at this point, because the phone is turned off, you can remove the SIM card. There's no risk to activate additional protection mechanism because the phone is already turned off. Then you can try identify the phone. Which kind of device do I have in front of me? I can do it in two ways. Through the IMEI, and the IMEI is written in the SIM card tray for iPhone X and above, or on the back of the device up to the iPhone 6. Also, you can check the device model. The device model is written on the back of the phone, model A1549 here in the example, up to the iPhone 7. For the iPhone 8 and above, the model number, it's always A and 4 digits. It's written here in the SIM card space. It's quite hidden, it's not easy to read. So it's easier to read the IMEI with a good lens because it's written really, really, really small. Once you have identified the IMEI and so the specific model, you can then decide what will be your next step. Because you have a turned off device without knowing the passcode, you need to do something at a level that allows you to get access to part of the data and to the file system without knowing the passcode. And for ages, for years, we were, I would not say stuck, but we didn't have commonly publicly available solutions to do that. There were tools, techniques, services providing the option to get an acquisition, but there was no public exploit until the end of September 2019, in which Axiomix published this tweet in which he said that he discovered a bootrom exploit that can be, it's a permanent, unpatchable bootrom exploit. So it's something that cannot be patched with iOS updates. And all the iPhones, from the iPhone 4S to the iPhone 10, they are vulnerable. They are all vulnerable to this exploit. Starting from this exploit, a huge group of really smart people and jailbreakers, they developed the first jailbreak based on the Checkm8 exploit. This jailbreak is called Checkra1n, and it came out November 2019. It is the first jailbreak based on the Checkm8 bootrom exploit. This specific jailbreak works on the iPhone 5S, from the iPhone 5S to the iPhone X with iOS 12.13.3 or above. But it doesn't disable or bypass the USB restricted mode. It means that if the phone is already in USB restricted mode, you cannot get into a Checkra1n state. You cannot jailbreak the phone because you need to deactivate first USB restricted mode. The first versions of Checkra1n were able to do it. Now it's no more an option. In any case, Checkra1n is a jailbreak. The goal of a jailbreak is to allow people evading the jail. For us, from a forensic perspective, it's also important to have less impact as possible on the data. So since the Checkm8 exploit was found and discovered, some companies, some forensic companies started developing their own implementation of Checkm8. At the moment, as far as in my knowledge, there are 3 software supporting a customized version of the Checkm8 exploit that allow the extraction, the execution of the Checkm8 exploit, so to become root, so to jailbreak the device, only in RAM and bypassing the USB restricted mode. It means deactivating the protection mechanism of the USB restricted mode. So that means that with these tools, Elcomsoft, Cellebrite, and MSIB, as far as I was able to find on the website, it's only iPhone 8 and above, while Cellebrite and Elcomsoft is from the iPhone 5S, so same support than Checkra1n. These 3 companies implemented their own Checkm8 exploit, their own implementation of the Checkm8 exploit. There are also other companies that are working on it, but they also implemented solutions that we will see soon on how to get into the device based on a agent or different vulnerabilities, like Elcomsoft and others. Also, Oxygen has support for CHECKRAIN device. Axiom has support for CHECKRAIN device. So the support of Checkm8 and CHECKRAIN is growing, of course. You can get then, because you don't know the passcode, you can have access to the file system and get what is called the BFU acquisition, before first unlock. It means that you are extracting all the files that are available without the need of knowing the passcode. And why is that possible? Because when you turn your iPhone on, your iPhone is booting. You need to it needs to boot. It needs to have services up and running. It needs to connect to your 3G, 4G network. It needs to read some of your configuration before you insert the passcode. So it means that all of those files are protected with a complex mechanism that I don't want to go into details now. It's detailed in the iOS security document. But just to let you know, that in iOS you can have different layers of protections per file. Some of them are protected in a way that depends only on the hardware and not on your passcode, on the hardware protection and not on your passcode. So that means that if I am able to get into the phone with a boot ROM exploit, like we can do with Checkm8, I can have access to the file system and I can extract all those files whose encryption is not depending on the passcode. And that's the goal of obtaining a BFU extraction. This can be done in these screens. You see Cellebrite UFED doing a BFU extraction. And I also explained quite in detail what you can get from a BFU extraction. Here is my blog. Some of the files that you can find here. First, Wi-Fi.plist. Wi-Fi.plist, com.apple.wifi.plist contains the list of Wi-Fi network that your phone was connected to historically. In my phone, you can see that there are 174 items in the list of known network. So it's a huge amount of information. This file can be parsed with open source script. If you take a look at the sysdiagnose scripts by Cheeky Forensics Monkey, there's a script to parse com.apple.wifi.plist. You have the name of the network, you have the BSSID, so the MAC address of the access point. You have the first connection, the last connection, and maybe you can geolocate based on the MAC address of the access point. So this information is not protected. If you don't work in forensics, you can think about that like, if I lose my iPhone and it is between the iPhone 5S and the iPhone 10, what is my risk? Which is my risk? And these files are not protected with your passcode. It means that if you lose it, these files are gone and they can be extracted. Identity services ID status cache. Here you have details about the contacts, people I got in contact with, maybe via a FaceTime video or via SMS or iMessages. I decided to hide my phone numbers, but here it's full of phone numbers of my contacts. I start mentioning that if you're interested to go more in depth in this topic, we cover it quite in depth, really in depth. This file, we have labs based on these kind of things in our 4.585 smartphone course. I will
Mattia, I'm not hearing you. I'm not sure if I'm the only one having that issue. Okay, everyone else can hear fine, so we'll just let it go.
Okay, sorry. Okay, thanks. I see some messages. Thanks. Okay, great. So com.apple.com/center.plist is the plist file containing information about the connection with the carrier network, phone network. Here you have the phone number, the SIM phone number, the ICC ID of the SIM card, the last known ICC ID. So also if you have a phone without a SIM card, you can still find the ICC ID of the last used SIM card. You can get timestamps. So also this file is not protected with your passcode. Apple Com-Center counts gives you the amount of traffic that was done with the phone, like cellular bytes received, cellular bytes sent, but also the number of SMS sent successful, count 3,499, and SMS received successful 11,503, so a huge number. Available companion apps. Here you can find the list of installed apps. So which apps was the user using? That's another kind of information that can be helpful to profile the user, also if you don't have the passcode, because remember, we are in the case in which we don't know the passcode, and we have a phone that is compatible with the Checkm8 exploit. Application state contains a lot of information about installed application, including binary large object file, blob file. This is another kind of database we cover in our class. This query is coming from a blog post by Alexis Brignoni. He is also the author of iLeap. That is a great tool to parse, also to parse BFU images that you can obtain. I will show you also a couple of tools that you can use to get a full file system of the phone, including a script I wrote. TCC.db, Transparency, Consent and Control, is the database containing the authorization that you gave to the specific apps. So in this case, you can see, for example, WhatsApp. WhatsApp was allowed on my phone to get access to the address book, to the camera, to the photos, the microphone, the Face ID. So when you see allowed one, it means that the specific application was allowed to use the specific service. So it means that when the application requested the permission, the user allowed to authorize the application. This file is not protected with your passcode. So basically, an attacker or a forensic guy, depending on your perspective, can have access to the TCC.db and see all the application and which permissions these applications have. Data usage, it's a more detailed database containing the usage in terms of timestamp of the various bundle IDs. So here you can see the usage of WhatsApp, when it was used for the first and the last time. You see it's a long time because I moved through different iPhones by backing up my data. So it's incremental, it's full of historical data, not only coming from the last phone, but from previous one. This is another thing we cover in our course. Accounts free, that's one of the most interesting, the list of accounts. So basically all the username, your SMTP, your email configuration, your iCloud account. We do not have passwords, of course, but we have the list of accounts. That's half of the information we need. So also this file is not protected with your passcode. AD.datastore.sqlitedb. This needs time to be explained, but in short, you can run queries and you can get the amount of time that the phone was plugged in a specific date. For how long? You can get information about the battery level, the energy. This database is parsed very well by commercial tools, is parsed very well by iLeap, by Alexis. So this is a treasure, a gold mine of information for forensics, because it contains a lot of data in terms also of age, so it can go back. And this is again not protected with your passcode. Media library, it's basically everything you bought on the Apple iTunes store, not the applications, but like books, music, movies, stuff like that. Everything is stored in your media library.sqlitedb. The structure of this file is coherent among iOS since like iOS 4, because it is always shared with your iCloud account. So, because it must be shared among different devices. If I buy a book on my iPhone, I need to be able to get access to the same book on the iPad or on another device, or my Mac or whatever. So the media library also contains the iCloud ID. The iCloud ID can be really useful to extract some, to ask, for example, data to Apple, or to check who is the user in terms of the iCloud account. iTunes Press is a file containing the names of computers that your iPhone was connected to. So this is, again, an unprotected thing. It doesn't contain any serial number or any identification number of your devices, of your computers, but it contained the host name. Here you can see that it was connected to various computers. A Mac, maybe, a MacBook Air, and other computers whose name is Mattia Forensic, Mattia PC. I don't know when my host. Fortunately, it was connected only to computers whose name is Mattia. That's good. Let's go to something more interesting. The cache of the Mail app is not completely encrypted with your passcode. So it means that if you go into the private var mobile container data application, so this is the folder that contains the mail cache. Of course, it depends on the application ID that can change, so you have to be careful about that. But in my test, I was able to see that the cache of the Mail app is not completely protected in a way that depends on the passcode. WhatsApp chat, WhatsApp database, WhatsApp images, they are all encrypted in a way that depends on your passcode, but WhatsApp logs are not. WhatsApp logs can contain a lot of information. You do not have the data of communication, but you have the metadata of communication, including if a file was transferred, if a voice call was made, if a video call was made, the phone number of your contacts, and it can go back. In my test, I saw that you can go back typically 7 days. So it's maybe the last 7 days of action on your WhatsApp log, on your WhatsApp, are stored in your log. That's something that needs to be investigated more. There are not good parsers for WhatsApp log. So if there is someone who is very good and has a bit of time, developing something to process in a proper way, WhatsApp log could be really, really useful, especially because they can contain information also about something that was deleted. So maybe you can see, I had a case in which I was able to check that some messages were deleted by comparing the fact that an information about a message was present, was in the log, but it was not, the message was not in the database. But I had to do it manually, so it takes a lot of time. We need some parser for those logs. Viber is another application that I choose to analyze. The Viber settings database is not encrypted with your passcode. So I hide some information from my phone number, but you also have user ID, member ID, and maybe something that can be used to I don't know, to get for sure information about the user. There are other applications that are not completely protecting the data in a proper way. I'm working on a new update, on a new blog post about that. Third-party applications not protecting the data in a proper way. I mean data stored on the device, of course. When you have a locked device, and you cannot, and you do not have the passcode, if it is vulnerable to Checkmate, this is what you can do. Doing a BFU extraction and try to analyze as best as possible the evidence. If you want to try to get into the phone, you have a couple of solutions. One is a tool that is for law enforcement only. It's Gray Key that support cracking of iOS codes. I don't know exactly up to which version and for which iOS devices. So if you are in law enforcement and if you use it, you can get in contact with them. And the same is for Cellebrite, that provides both an unlocking service and a tool for law enforcement called Cellebrite Premium. The unlocking service, that is the web page, it's also reserved to law enforcement, and the information available today on the website says up to the iPhone XR and up to iOS 12. But on the web page, you can see that it's constantly in evolution. So it's always better if you're in law enforcement to get in contact with Cellebrite directly, to Cellebrite or Grayshift or other companies. These are the two companies I know, but maybe there are others. To get in contact with them to see if the specific configuration of hardware and software is something that they can manage. Last case, turn off without a passcode. It means the phone is turned off, but there's no passcode, or we know the passcode, okay? That is the easiest situation, but you have to take care of different things. So first, if you have an iPhone, from the iPhone 5S up to the iPhone 10, so a phone that is vulnerable to the Checkmate exploit, you can do a Checkmate-based full file system. It can be done with one of the three tools I mentioned before, or you can also CHECKRAIN the device, because USB restricted mode in this case is not an issue for you. And you can do an acquisition with one of the other tools supporting a CHECKRAIN device. So the Elcomsoft Magnet or Oxygen, or if you want to do a Checkmate acquisition based on the customized implementation, you can use Belkasoft, Cellebrite, or MSAB. I personally developed an open source script that you can use if you have a jailbroken device. That's a general script. It's not meant to be a forensic valid method. I don't want to build a tool. I just wanted to build something that you can use for testing. If you have an iOS device and you want to test how it works, how you can get a full file system, how you can start investigating the data structure, I will point you in a couple of slides to this script. When you have an iPhone that is XRS Max 11, 11 Pro, 11 Pro Max, and the passcode is available or the passcode is not set, then you can do different type of acquisitions. These ones can be done without the need of any jailbreak, any action to become root in some sense. So you can do these things directly on the phone by interacting with the phone. You can create an iTunes backup. You can interact with the phone with the AFC protocol. You can extract crash logs. Crash logs are logs of crashing of the applications. You can generate a sysdiagnose extraction. It's something that we studied. You can find online a presentation and a paper on sysdiagnose for forensic purposes. It's a paper I wrote with Heather Malik and Adrian Leung. You can get this data in this way. You can get these type of acquisitions. You can have issues. One issue is the encrypted backup. If you have an encrypted backup, there is one thing that you can do, that is resetting all settings. These has pros and cons. The pros is that you can get an unencrypted backup without the need of knowing the password, because the backup password is an additional protection mechanism, different than the passcode. But if you know the passcode, or if the passcode is not set, you can remove the backup password by using the reset all settings feature. This removes some data. This removes, for example, the com.apple.wifi.plist file. So it can be used, but you must know that you are losing some data. So before, if you have an encrypted backup, especially if you have an encrypted backup, but in general, if you want to get a full file system and the device is not vulnerable to the Checkm8 exploit, you can use an agent-based extraction. That is a sort of soft jailbreak, let me call it. It's not a jailbreak, it's getting root access through the installation of an agent. This agent must be signed with an Apple ID registered in the Apple Developer Program. You see here, installing the agent requires the use of an Apple ID registered in Apple's Developer Program. That is something that you need. If you go into the Elcomsoft blog, there's a nice article on why an iOS forensic expert needs an Apple Developer account. So this was the first agent that was published, and it works now up to iOS 13.4.1, and also it works with the iPhone 11 and iPhone 11 Pro, and so the most recent devices. Of course, we are in the scenario in which we know the passcode or there's no passcode set on the device. Also, Elcomsoft has a similar agent that was introduced a couple of months ago, if I will remember, and the same, it goes from iOS 10 to iOS 13.4.1, and also in this case you must have an Apple Developer ID and you must know the passcode. You cannot do the agent installation in a BFU mode, just to give you an idea. You need to have access to the phone. If you have access to the phone, but you do not have access to one of the tools agent-based, or maybe the agent, as we saw, supports at the moment up to for 13.4.1, and you have a 13.5 iOS device, that is common. We saw before a huge percentage, slide one, huge percentage of devices are with the latest version of iOS. You can decide whether installing a jailbreak. Uncover is the latest available jailbreak. It supports from iOS 11 to iOS 13.5. Most of the iPhone devices, if not all of them. And you need to have access to the phone. Again, you cannot jailbreak the device with Uncover without knowing the passcode. You need to have access to the device. This is my script that I wrote. It's called iOS Triage. If you have a jailbroken device, either with CHECKRAIN or with Uncover, with the proper settings, you need to set some things, and you need to install a couple of tools. I wrote a set of blog posts on my website, that is blog.digital-forensics.it, where you can find some details instruction, but Ian Whiffin and Shafiq Punja wrote a great post on their website on CHECKRAIN, and they use my script in explaining how to use CHECKRAIN to get a full file system. So basically, I suggest you to download my script and to use their instruction, because they are much more complete than mine instruction. It took me a lot of time to write the script, so it took me, when you write instructions, I'm always bad. So anyway, here it is, the open source script that you can download from RealityNet GitHub website, GitHub account. If you are locked out, if there's nothing that you can do with the phone, If you have a locked device and you do not have access, you're not allowed to have access to the Cellebrite Premium service, the Cellebrite Premium, all the Cellebrite Advanced Services, or Grey Key, and the phone is not compatible with Checkm8 and you cannot get a BFU, there's not a lot that you can do, to be honest, apart going around and trying to see if you have evidences somewhere else. Search for local backup stored on the user computer. Search for other data stored on the user computer. Can be crash logs. We have an XML file called iPod devices on your computer. It contains the list of iOS devices that were connected to a Windows PC. iCloud acquisition. It can be done with various tools. Take a look at synced devices, Apple Watch and Apple TV. Elcomsoft iOS Forensic Toolkit has support for both the Apple Watch and the Apple TV. Get access to, request access to Apple if you are in law enforcement. This is an example of the acquisition via iCloud with Elcomsoft, and this is the slide about the Apple support. So which kind of data can you request? If you are in US, you need to search for the proper one. This is for outside US. That's because I live in Italy, but in US there are like different rules, but you can download it from the Apple website for free. Of course, it's publicly available. If you know the user credentials, you can go into the privacy portal and request the data for the GDPR. This is like requesting the data to Apple in some sense. So if you have the user data and like you're doing an investigation, like for a company, and you want to know if there are strange logins or stuff like that, requesting through the data Apple privacy portal through the iCloud account of the user set on the phone, that could be another interesting, another good option. I'm going to conclude and then I'm going to answer some of your questions that I can see here. So first, I want to conclude with, I suggest you to download the FOR585 poster. It's free. You can download it from the SANS website, for585.com/poster. In the poster, one of the things that you can find is the iOS cheat sheet. This is something that me, Heather, and Lee put together. It took us a lot of time to do it, and for every single file that we think it's relevant from a forensic perspective, you can find the information where the file is stored, a small description, if the file is available in a BFU acquisition, if the file is available in a backup, and if the file is available in a sysdiagnose acquisition. If you want, and if you're interested, I also suggest you to register for the SANS DFIR Summit that will take place next week on Thursday and Friday, 16 and 17 of July. It's free for all. So it's free. I want to repeat, it's free. So you can register. I will take a talk on the forensic analysis of the Apple HomePod and the Apple HomeKit environment. This is our course syllabus. As you can see, we deal with all the different operating systems and a lot of different things. We have more than 30 different images of phones ready to be analyzed with a really hands-on approach based on the usage, based on the analysis of raw analysis of data. We use tools, we rely on tools, but we teach on how to do things manually and how to run queries, how to search for the proper data on an iPhone. These are the next, on an iPhone or an Android, on a mobile device. And these are the next classes, live online classes. I'm teaching this week, so I will not be teaching for the next for the next month. I will have a FOR500 Windows course. So if you're interested, these can be found at the URL in the slides. I'm going to answer a couple of your questions And by the way, these are my contacts. Here you can find me on Twitter. If you have questions, you can send me an email. Here you have my blog, so you can take a note of that. A couple of questions. So I see a question from Peter. Hi, Peter. I hope you're fine. I believe Uncover is working on iPhone XR now too. Yes, I think so. I want to show you quickly. As always, the best resource to check which jailbreak is valid for which phone is the iPhone Wiki. The iPhone Wiki is trusted and always updated. So if you go here in the jailbreak section and you scroll down, we can check that Uncover, it says yes to all the devices. As you can see, starting from mostly all the version of Uncover are compatible with the XR. So up to the 13.5. 13.5.1 is not, at the moment, the only way to jailbreak it is CHECKRAIN, only up to the iPhone 10. Thanks for your congratulations. I see another question. What can you do in the case of a phone turned off and there is a passcode, but you don't know it? Yes, that's the worst scenario. You have a phone, it's turned off, you don't know the passcode. What can you do? So I try to resume. If it is an iPhone X, you can do a BFU extraction. So it means you can get part of the file system. If you have access to a tool having a Checkm8 implementation that bypass USB restricted mode, you can get a BFU extraction. Or if it is still in a version that can be CHECKRAINed without any problem with the USB restricted mode, then it means that you can get a BFU extraction. You cannot get an IFU extraction after first unlock. You need to unlock it. Unlock it means that you need to crack the passcode. How can you crack the passcode? So far, as far as in my knowledge, there are two companies providing this service. One is Cellebrite, either through the Cellebrite Premium tool available to set of tools available to law enforcement. The other one is the Cellebrite services that is provided as a service, not as a tool, to law enforcement. The other tool that I know, I've never used it because I'm not in law enforcement, but I know it exists. It's discussed in the community. We know, I saw it. It's Graykey. These are the only two options I'm aware of to crack a passcode. Okay? And when iPhone content is erased through setting reset, is there used data still that can be recovered? So the answer is on the phone, no. On the phone, once the phone is wiped, all the keys, the master key is gone, and there's nothing that you can do at the moment. I'm not aware of any tool that is able to recover data from a phone that is wiped, that was wiped. You can spot when the phone was wiped. We have a section in our course on that, how to analyze and how to investigate when a phone was wiped, when an iPhone was wiped, but you cannot recover data from the phone. You can still find data on iCloud. You can still find data on a synced PC. You can still find data on synced devices, Apple TV, Apple Watch. So these are the three sources when the phone is wiped. Another question, any idea why iOS 12.3 not supported by CHECKRAIN and all the Checkm8 implementations? To be honest, I do not have a complete answer to this question because I'm not a jailbreaker. I'm really grateful to the great guys who developed the CHECKRAIN, the jailbreak. I don't really know why. I don't know if it is something that is, something related that needs to be, it needs too much changes. I don't know. What I can say is that it's not surprising. I'm not surprised that the support of Cellebrite and Elcomsoft in terms of Checkm8 implementation, it seems coherent with CHECKRAIN. So they support iPhone 5S starting from iOS 12.3. So I think that there should be a reason why. So maybe in some sense they use part of CHECKRAIN. They also it's implemented in Windows. So I don't really know, but I can say that also the implementation of Checkm8 on forensic tools starts from the iPhone 5S and iOS 12.3. So I don't have a complete answer, to be honest, to that. And last question, then we are going to close because we are late. Even though the phone may have no passcode, won't turning off the phone possibly activate some mechanism during the reboot that could be harmful to our investigation? So, of course, you don't know. So, if you have an unlocked phone and you see that there's no passcode, before turning off the phone, I would suggest you at least to try documenting and try extracting some data, because in the worst scenario, you have those data. And that's why I suggested airdrop. It strongly depends the situation in which you are. If you are in the field, that maybe could be complicated. I mean, the unlocked phones, it's really a rare case because you have to find the phone here unlocked, and you have to have the option to get the phone before it is locked. So if you're doing some kind of investigation, maybe it's an option, but you have to be sure not to lock it. So my suggestion is always document as much as possible because it's unlocked at that time. So it's better to document as much as possible. If you see that there's no passcode, if the phone is isolated from the network, in general, I don't see problems. So maybe the phone is already jailbroken, and when you turn it off, it wipes. Everything can be. But in general, I don't see a lot of issues with that. I would stop because I'm 5 minutes late. I see other questions, but I think most of them were repeated, so I see the same questions. So I want to thank you very much. I leave here my contacts so that you can find me on LinkedIn or you can send me an email. If you have any additional question, the presentation will be published on the SANS website soon, along with the video and the audio. Have a good evening, and I hope to see you soon in one of my courses.